All right, everybody, thanks for joining us here. Welcome to the Forbes Weekly webinar. This week, we are going to talk about passwords. And so this is a cybersecurity first approach to passwords, and passwords are very critical. They're ubiquitous, they're everywhere. And so we'll talk about them in just a second. So, like I said, John Faust, COO, Forbes Cybersecurity. I've been doing this since 2007, worn many hats in my career. Been doing cybersecurity pretty fully for about a decade here or so. Amazon best-selling author, wrote a book about cybersecurity. And my goal here is to evangelize about cybersecurity and make companies and businesses in the area more secure. So today we're going to talk about the importance of password security, what makes a weak password, a strong password, password reuse, password managers, MFA, password rotations, and policies. The goal here is by the end of this, you're going to have a really good understanding of what is a good password, how to make one, and some of modern password best practices. You're going to hear the word password a lot. So let's get in. So passwords are a gateway. And what I mean by that is they control access to pretty much everything these days. Anything that you want to keep to where you want to kind of have knowledge of, you want to have a password that's has that saved. And so almost every single website you go to have passwords that you put in. And this allows you to store information as far as your address, sometimes credit card information, things like that. But really, it's access to any sensitive information, bank accounts, email, computer passwords, sensitive files, anything you want to keep. You're going to have to be behind some kind of password gateway. They're everywhere and they're ubiquitous. And really, password security is the first step to practical cybersecurity for any person and to do. So you have to keep track of it from both a person and a business perspective. So weak passwords, let's go from there. So 66% of Americans use the same password for more than one online account. And I can tell you I run a lot of audits, and this number is probably low. This is a Harris poll, so this is self-reported. From actually doing audits, it's higher than that of companies that we see. Password reuse is ubiquitous. It is everywhere. It is widespread. And the hackers know this and they use it against you. And then as far as coming up with a good password, almost 60% of American adults use a pet's name, their own name, a partner's name, or child's name in the passwords that they create. And so if somebody just gets a little bit of information about you on social media, they're likely able to guess your password. We've failed as an industry for years because we told people to pick passwords that are hard for humans to remember, but easy for machines to guess. And so what that is we'll give an example here. And I will use the word character. And so this is a bad password. It's short, so that means it's easy for computers to crack. It wouldn't take very long for a graphic processing unit to hit this password and try every character option in here before they guess the password. But then I have to remember, did I replace the A for an at? Did I replace both A's for ats? Did I make a 3 for the E, or did I put a 3 at the end? What did I do? And I have to remember this for different things. And the hackers know these normal character substitutions, and they just put them into their algorithm that runs to try to crack that password. So what does a good, strong password look like? Well, longer passwords are better. So 15 character or more passwords, or it's going to take years for that same hacker to guess, even if it's a simple password with just letters only. You want to use like random objects or passphrase versus guessable information. So I have an example here of a 15 character password in Wonder Forest. Wonder Forest 34 star. So it's longer. That means it's going to be harder for a hacker to break, but it'll be easier for you to remember. And you make a story about it. I'm in wonder when I visit the forest. And then you just have to remember a couple of numbers and what was the special character you use. But infinitely easier for us to remember, infinitely easier for us to type in, and it just flows off the fingers, and it's harder for a password to guess, or a hacker to guess. Other thing that we want to talk about here, and we'll touch on this more later when we talk about password managers, are random characters versus a passphrase. And so that'll be like your password manager drops in some 15 string regular random character password. Those are hard to type, for one, and they're hard to remember. And so they're good if you're using a password manager. If you never have to physically type that password, if you can always copy and paste it in or do an autofill action to get it in. From personal experience, I have a lot of issues with those sometimes where I can't just copy and paste those down and I do have to type my passwords. And so I prefer a passphrase, but a 15 character random password will be more secure than one with like the WonderForce 34 star, but it's a trade-off between usability and accessibility. And so it just really depends on the use case and what you want to do. Password reuse. So we touched on this and we're going to go into a little bit further. So what goes on is humans look for shortcuts. And so what the thing is because passwords are so ubiquitous is that we can't remember all those passwords. And the criminals know this. And so what happens is a site like LinkedIn or Netflix will get hacked and they'll have your email address and your or the username, and they'll have the password. And so what they'll do is they'll just try that against a bunch of other sites to see if they can get in, to see if we're using this password. We've seen examples of somebody had a Dropbox account from years past. And this isn't new. We've seen multiple examples of this. Somebody has a Dropbox account from the years past, and they were using the same password for that as on some other site that was hacked, and their password's on the dark web. And now all of a sudden, they start having emails sent out of Dropbox of files getting shared from them that are further looking to steal other people's passwords or gain access to bank accounts or email accounts or things like that. And so really for password reuses, you want to think, is your Netflix password the same as your bank? Is your LinkedIn password the same as your credit cards? All those sorts of things. And you want to make sure that you are not reusing passwords because it is one of the biggest gateways to criminals. Have a different unique password for each site. Now, I know this is difficult. We'll talk about how to help with this with password managers down at the end, but what you want to do is there's so many sites that you have to look at that a lot of people have a hard time getting started. So I like to come up with a pretty simple method of think about what can be most damaging to you and then do those first. So your banks, financial information, credit cards, health insurance, health gateways, your computer, your email, password managers, all those sorts of things. You want to have completely unique passwords on those things, and you don't want to have them be variations of the same password. So you don't want to have WonderForest 35 star and WonderForest 26%. You want to have some combination of different words so those passwords aren't the same. Because if a hacker finds out that first chunk, then they're going to try every variation that goes there from the end. After you do those most critical places, you want to prioritize. And so where I like to say is, okay, what can hurt me the most next out of those most critical ones? And Amazon, people can order things for you. They can order gift cards out of there. Facebook sometimes has a credit card saved, and people can order things off of Facebook and defraud money out of you that way. Any site where criminal can order things with stored credit cards and have those sent somewhere else, like say maybe you order car parts and you have a credit card saved in a car parts website. Can they order expensive parts and have them shipped somewhere else so that they can then sell them on the black market and steal them? And then from there, I like to consider like Netflix and Spotify to be some of my least important ones. If somebody gets access to those, it's not dire. Yes, somebody could stream videos or music, but they're not going to be able to order a bunch of things and really take money from me. And then on top of that, you want to use a password manager. We'll talk about that in a second. And you want to have multi-factor authentication on anywhere you can to kind of help you if there is a password stolen. So let's get into password manager. So what a password manager is a software that encrypts and stores passwords securely. We say it must have multi-factor authentication. That is a 100% your password manager has to have MFA. And we'll talk about MFA more in a minute. And a unique master password. So I say that I have 3 passwords that I'm guaranteed to remember: my computer password, my email password, and my password manager password. And those are all very different passwords. And I want to have them so that I can remember those so I don't have to look them up and they're not stored in my password manager. They're accessible in multiple ways. So a browser extension. So that's if you go to, like, say, a Chrome Edge extension, you go to a website, it just autofills that information on the website you're at. Your cell phone, so you can get access to the password manager off your cell phone or the website itself. They can generate random strong passwords. If you never have to type it in, consider just letting the password manager create you a 15-character random password and go from there. If you don't need to know it or type it in, that's a good way to go about things. They'll autofill passwords into a lot of sites. Sometimes you'll have to copy and paste them out of there and go from there. But I also get a thing of, why can't I just save a document with my passwords? Well, it's not encrypted. It has less security. There's no multi-factor authentication. If somebody gets access to that single doc, they have everything. And I know password managers are a risk, but it's something, sometimes it's just a trade-off that we need to take for the ability to change these passwords everywhere and go for there. And then you look at the document, it's often not traveling with you. So you won't have it on your cell phone. You won't have it on those sorts of things. And to be honest with you, when I do see people that have their password saved in a document, half the passwords in there are just some variation of one main theme of password. People aren't really doing password, or they're reusing passwords, put it that way. Some popular examples are 1Password, Bitwarden, Keeper, and Passportal. These are just a few. These are very well respected in the industry, and some of the good ones that we and other people we use personally, we use for a company and things like that. Multi-factor authentication. So something you know and something you have. So this is a password is something you know and then something you have, whether it's a cell phone, a push authentication, some kind of code that you type in, things like that. It's not a silver bullet. The criminals know about MFA, and there's always working on bypasses. One of the things that goes on is MFA fatigue. And so we'll talk about password reuse can cause something called single factor authentication. So just because you have MFA, if you're reusing that password and that password's known, then they can hit you with push requests over and over again until you eventually say, okay, I'm going to prove this just to get this thing to go away on my phone. And that's called MFA fatigue. If the request is not obvious, contact your IT. It should show up on your computer or something like that you have to do MFA. If you're getting an MFA out of the blue, you want to contact your IT and tell them about it. And then we want to talk about the security order of MFA. Push notifications, the Microsoft 65 push notifications, authentication codes from an app, those where those 6-digit codes change, or those physical keys that have the codes that change. Those are the most secure MFA. And then text and email are way down at the bottom as far as MFA security. They're better than nothing, but not by a lot. So you really want to try, okay, if I can get MFA set up, I want to have it in the more secure methods possible. Password rotation here. We're going to talk about this. We failed the industry massively in saying that passwords need to be rotated. It's no longer a good idea. Users were creating passwords that were way less secure. So I need to make a new password. Okay, spring 2023. And it's like, okay, I have to make a new password now. And I look outside and it's like, okay, well, I'm going to do fall 2023. And this was prevalent next year, spring 2024. And we would also see things like postcard 1 exclamation point and postcard 2 exclamation point and postcard 1 at. And it just caused the hackers to know one password, and then they just have to change the end, and it was easy. We really recommend a unique password for each site. And then we say only change those when there's been an indicator of compromise. So somebody alerts you that there was a dark web, your password was found on the dark web. You get a breach notification that say, and I'm picking on LinkedIn and Netflix because I've had these in the past, but your password was found in a Netflix breach, then you would just change that password. Or say your health insurance provider got hacked and your password was stolen with that, then you just change that password because you're not reusing it other places. Password policies, things like that, these are good for companies and personal. So you want to have a password policy, some guide of how you go about this. So in that, it should have what is a strong password, how to create a strong password, policy on password reuse, where it might be acceptable to reuse passwords and where it's not, that kind of hierarchy documented out. And then multi-factor authentication policy, generally to say, like, we want multi-factor everywhere. These are the places where it should be, all those sorts of things. And it had that codified. Lockout procedures and password changes for if there's multiple failed attempts. And what you're looking at there is I have different hierarchies. So if it's a computer password that keeps hitting Active Directory over and over that's failed, that's going to be a higher precedence to maybe change that password because it's gone through multiple security levels before it can get to there than somebody trying to hit Office 365, which is being hit every second, multiple times every second of every day. And then some things to consider are compliancy considerations. So there are old compliancy protocols that say you need to do password rotations, and they're outdated. They need to be changed. The government is now coming across those things, but some of these policies are old. And so you might have to have in your password policy that these passwords have to be rotated because of this compliancy requirement. So key takeaways here, this is a modern practice and policies you need to have in place. It's not the same as it was a decade ago or 5 years ago or 3 years ago. These are changing. And so you want to make sure that you're on top of it and that your employees are on top of it and know how to do correct modern password practices. Longer passwords are better. Know how to make a strong password. Avoid password reuse because the criminals will use it against you. MFA everywhere that it can be, even though it's not a silver bullet, but it definitely helps. Password manager is key. And then if you're looking for some nice dry reading, National Institutes of Standards and Technology issued a publication on how to do passwords. There it is. If you're looking for some nice go-to-sleep material, but there's some things there for you to look at. Once again, I'm John with Forbes Cybersecurity. Follow us on YouTube. Go to our blog. Follow us on these places. We're here to help. We want to educate you, and the more that we can educate you and your business, the less that the hackers are able to do. And it's one of my personal goals to secure as many Cincinnati businesses as possible. I have helped companies go through hacks. I've helped companies go through business email compromise. It can be devastating. Let's go and try to take the teeth out of these things and make them not as bad as they could be. So yet again, John with Forbes Cybersecurity, I appreciate your time. Follow us at those places, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.